So we get inside, and I take him, and I take Athena by the hand. And with David documenting this, I introduced them to Christopher Nolan. I introduced them to Michael Caine. I said, Michael, her grandfather and Jerry are responsible for the creation of your character. Danny DeVito was there. I said, Danny, he is a co-creator of Penguin. Aaron Eckhart, he's a co-creator of Two-Face. Christian Bale. We went around to everybody that was there. Gary Oldman. And every single person physically embraced Jerry and Athena as well as emotionally and thanked them for what they had done and that their creation, the mythology, the contemporary mythology they created would last forever. Jerry is getting this hug from Michael Caine, and he turns to me and there are tears running down his face. And Jerry says, this is the greatest night of my life. And there's a reason I'm telling you this, folks, because when I started my trek to bring Batman to the silver screen and do dark and serious versions of Batman, there are two parts to my mission. Because I think you can tell now, I'm a comic book geek. All right? I learned to read from comics before I was 4. By the time I graduated high school, I had over 30,000 comic books dating back to 1936. It filled my parents' garage. They never once got their car in our garage. This was my life. I mean, it was really my life. But my mom and dad used to take me on Sundays. My dad worked 6 days a week as a stonemason. But he would take me and my friend Bobby because we found out all the creators of the superheroes from the 30s to the 60s lived in either New Jersey or New York. And I would make arrangements to interview them for fanzines. And they would spend their Sundays taking me to their homes. So I got to meet all these people. People whose livelihoods were denigrated in the 1950s and 60s by a society that was captivated by Dr. Frederick Wertham in a book called Seduction of the Innocent, in which he said that comic books were the reason, the sole reason for the post-World War II rise of juvenile delinquency in America. Folks, there were comic book burnings in different cities across America in the mid-50s. Jersey City, hey, St. Pete's, you should go all the way. But there were burnings. And it was a terrible time. And it was kind of subversive to be a comic book reader back then. And also, I'll tell you, it was very uncool if you were over the age of 12. When I went to buy them at a candy store or a drugstore, people looked at me like I was a sociopath. It was a very different time. When I was in high school and girls found out I was over 12 and still collecting and reading comic books, I became what I called date challenged. I mean, that was my life. But the point is, I got to meet mostly men, a few women, who created all these characters. And they told me the stories and gave me the history. And many of them were driven out of the comic book business because of the craziness going on in the 50s and early 60s. So not only was it my mission to restore the darkness and dignity to Batman on the screen, but also to bring honor and respect to the creators of comic books, the writers, the artists, the editors, the colorists, everybody who had worked and created comic books. And
Thank you.
Sadly, I mean, the good news is it's happened. And now comic books are mainstream and they're being respected as a true American art form, as indigenous to this country as jazz. Works of comic book artists from Jack Kirby to Joe Kubert to Steve Ditko are hanging up in museums, they're in galleries, they're in universities, and their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren can see this even though they might not have lived to have seen the day. And that part of this journey was just as important to me. Let me take you to a cold night in January 1966. I had been waiting for this night for months. I was so excited. The Batman TV show is coming on the air. Here it comes. Whoa, look at that animation. It's kind of kind of Jerry Robinson, Bob Kane. It's in color. Oh, the sets are extravagant. Wow, the car is cool. 20 minutes in, it hits me. Holy shit, this is a comedy. They're making a joke out of Batman. The whole world is laughing at my Batman, the Batman that Bill Finger told me about, how he was created as a creature of the night to stalk demented criminals in the shadows. So that night, as I was horrified by what I was seeing, I made a vow in my basement den, just like young Bruce Wayne once made a vow. Except his vow was made over the slaughtered bodies of his parents in the street. Mine was safe upstairs in the kitchen. I said, somehow, someday, I will show the world the true Batman. And I'm going to find a way to eliminate from the collective consciousness of the world culture these three new words, pow, zap, and wham. But what am I supposed to do, folks? I'm a comic book geek from Jersey. I'm a blue-collar boy. My dad's a stonemason, my mom's a bookkeeper. I didn't come from money. I couldn't buy my way into Hollywood. I had no relatives in Hollywood. I didn't know anybody in Hollywood. So how do you jump the Grand Canyon? What do you do when you have a passion in life and you discover what it is and it's coursing through your veins and you can feel it burning? What do? How do you make your dreams come true? So for me, I looked for any door open a crack that I could just stick my foot in and to pursue some kind of future dealing with comic books and movies and cartoons. And it happened for the first time. The opportunity of that little door happened when I was a junior in college. I'm at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. History major. It was the early 1970s, a time of great experimentation on college campuses, and that's all I'm going to say about that. There are kids in the room. But in response to those times, the College of Arts and Sciences started a thing called the Experimental Curriculum Department. And the concept was this. If you had an idea for a college course that had never been taught before and could get the backing of a department on campus, you had the right to appear before a panel of deans and professors and pitch it. If the dean approved it, you could then, even as an undergrad, teach it on campus for 3 hours of credit. I said, my God, never on the planet Earth has there ever been a college course on comic books. So I did a syllabus. Comic books are an American art form. Comic book superheroes are contemporary mythology. The ancient gods of Greece, Rome, and Egypt all still exist, except they wear spandex and capes. So I don't have to tell you guys, the Greeks called him Hermes, the Romans called him Mercury, we call him the Flash. The Greeks called him Poseidon, the Romans called him Neptune, we call him Aquaman. I went to the folklore department, the professor said, Michael, you're absolutely right. Doesn't matter if we call him Beowulf or Ulysses. It's about brave warriors of the day fighting the demons and dragons of their day. It doesn't matter if it's King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table or the Avengers or the Justice League. It's all the same, I'll back you. So armed with that, I appear before the panel. My hair's down to my shoulders. I'm wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt. I have my hippie love beads on, thank you very much. I have a pile of Batman and Superman comics under my arm. I walk into this room. It's dark mahogany with a big, long, dark conference room table. Professors sitting around it, deans sitting at the end. I thought I had just walked into the secret sanctum of the Justice League. As I walk in, the dean, do you ever see an old dude who has like a pair of half glasses that they have on the edge of their nose? So he looks down at me over his glasses and says, so you're the fellow who wants to teach a course on funny books at my university? I knew I was in deep trouble. I launch into the first pitch of my career. He lets me speak for 2 minutes and cuts me off. He says, Mr. Uslan, stop. He goes, come on, really? He goes, I read comic books when I was a little boy. I read every issue of Superman I could ever get my hands on. But all comic books are cheap entertainment for little children, nothing more, nothing less, and I reject your theory. This was a life-changing moment for me because I could have bowed my head, picked up my funny books, turned around and walked out of that room, but I figured I have nothing to lose here. So I decided to stand my ground. I said, Dean, may I ask you 2 questions? He said, ask me anything you want. I said, Dean, are you familiar with the story of Moses? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, yeah, so? I said, so Dean, very briefly, would you just summarize the story of Moses for me? He folds his arms, he sits back, he goes, Mr. Uslan, I don't know what game you're playing here, but I'll play this with you. He said the Hebrew people were being persecuted, their firstborn were being slain. a Hebrew couple place their infant son in a little wicker basket and send him down the River Nile. There he's discovered by an Egyptian family who raised him as his own son. When he grows up and learns of his true heritage, he became a great hero to the Hebrew people. I go, stop. Dean, that was great, thank you. You said before you read Superman comics when you were a kid. By any chance, do you remember the origin of Superman? He said, sure, the planet Krypton was about to blow up. A scientist and his wife placed their infant son in a little rocket ship and sent him to Earth. There he's discovered by the Kents, who raise him as their own son. When he grows up, then the dean stops. He stares at me for what I swear to you is an eternity, and then says, your course is accredited.